Hi, I'm Mrs. B. Welcome 4th and 5th grade. We're going to talk about science. So before text messages, before the internet, before smartphones, how did people communicate? Now we have LOL on our phones, laugh out loud. Have you ever sent that message out through a text or seen it somewhere? Maybe a grown-up has used it. Maybe it's old now. Nobody uses LOL anymore. I can't keep up. But how did people communicate a long time ago before we had this technology, especially during emergencies? Have you ever heard of a message in a bottle? So people who were out on ships and sailing, if they had an emergency, they would put a message, roll it up in the paper, put it in the bottle, and then throw it out to sea. And what was inside of those messages? Well, they would ask for an SOS, which could stand for Save Our Ship. So I want you to think about this, and then I want you to hear this. Let me get this other message ready that I want to share with you. And the message is going to repeat 5 times, and I want you to see if you pick up on the pattern. So just like we heard with the last lesson, if you had tuned into patterns, computers and technology and the way we communicate require patterns. So ready? Let me play this pattern for you and see maybe if you can connect SOS to what you're going to hear. So what you just heard was a pattern, and it was coded. And so we use codes all the time, and sometimes we don't even know that we are actually using codes. And so codes help us write messages in other ways besides the language, the way we talk, and we need to be able to decode those messages into a language that we understand and makes sense to us. And so what you just heard, those beeping sounds, was Morse code. And Samuel Morse is an American inventor, and he invented Morse code. And what you heard 5 times was SOS. And that's a distress signal. That means in case of emergency, someone would send out this message. Maybe you've heard it in a movie. Maybe you've come across it somehow, and you've heard that before. And so there are other ways that people can share information, create patterns besides just the way we talk using letters. People also can use drums. In some cultures, people use drums with specific patterns that can be heard miles and miles away. And so let's connect this idea of patterns, right? Something that repeats with Morse code and technology. So before Morse code was invented, people either had to memorize a message and then travel a long distance and give that message to another person, or people would write down the message, which still happens with mail today, and then it would need to get delivered. And it could take a really long time before that message got delivered. So Morse code really helped with getting messages across quickly. So with any code, we want to be able to decode it. And when we decode it, we want to connect it to language we understand. So I want to show you what Morse code looks like for the first 3 letters of the alphabet. It would be this. And the way we would read this is dit and dat. And this one's shorter when we say it or hear it, and this one's longer. I'm going to try to do this and give you an A in Morse code. Dit, dat. A B would be this pattern. A dat and 3 dits. So you would hear dat, dit, 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 Is that starting to sound like what we heard earlier, the SOS? And then I didn't write down the C, so I'm going to skip C. But let me show you what SOS looks like. So an S is 3 dits, which look like dots. So I'm going to repeat this pattern over here. And an O is 3 dots, 3 dashes. 1, 2, 3. Hopefully you can see that clearly where you are. Okay, so it would sound like is that what we heard? So let's hear that code again. Let me play that for you one more time. It's going to play 5 times. And this is what we're hearing. Ready? And so we use patterns and codes all the time with the technology we use. So the way the computers are set up, right, is that computers use electricity. We have to plug them into our walls. We have to charge them. We need to charge our technology, our smartphones, our tablets. Engineers use this idea of electricity, which is a type of energy. And it's a type of energy that flows charged particles. And we've heard the word particles before in a previous lesson, maybe last week when we talked about particles too small to be seen. Well, electricity is made up of particles too small to be seen. And so engineers use this idea of electricity, like a light switch. Electricity can be on or electricity can be off. And when electricity is on and all those wires in our computers, they can represent on with a number 1. And when the electricity is not running through some of the wires in our computers and it's off, they can represent that with a 0. So maybe you've heard of that before, 1s and 0s when it comes to using computers or coding. Maybe you've heard of hour of code. Maybe that's something you did at your school and you've done an activity on this before. And so when electricity is on, there's a code for 1. We might see black squares. And hopefully you can see this. So here's an example of a grid where all of the white squares would be off. And they would be coded as 0s. And on this image, hopefully you can see that all of the white squares on this grid are represented with a 0. And if the electricity is on and is coded as a 1, then we would see a black square. But we get to see all sorts of beautiful images on our computers all the time, very quickly. And they're not always black and white. There's beautiful colors that we see. And computer programmers, computer engineers use codes to help us get information, to help us communicate in very quick ways, to get images and numbers and letters. And so these ideas of patterns and codes and having a way to decode. Let me go over our words again. So again, decoding is that we can make sense of these patterns that have been coded in such a way that aren't in a language that we necessarily understand right away, but then they are decoded so that we understand what is being communicated. And so I want to challenge you to think about this idea of patterns and codes and technology and do something low-tech with it. So for example, I found some grid paper that I was able to print out. If you're not able to print out grid paper, you can take maybe some lined paper, cardboard, anything you can write on, and create grids. You want to try to make your squares the same size. If you have a ruler or some other tool to measure them, that's great. If not, do your best. So with this example, I used colors, and I tried to make a face. So I tried to make the outline of the face And then I used a different color for 2 eyes and a nose. I tried to spell hello, but I noticed that my H, my L's were smaller than my E and my O needed to be so that it really looked like it was supposed to. So you might want to plan out what your image would look like, what colors you want to use, just to make sure that what you put down is really what you wanted and you don't have to start over. You could brainstorm what it is that you want to create, what images or words. So this was on grid paper that I found online that I could print, but you can always create your own grid as well. And so I happened to have lined paper, and then I drew in the vertical lines. I already had the horizontal lines. And then again, only drawing within the squares, I want to create an image. Maybe you've heard of the word pixel before, and we see pixels on our computers. Maybe if you use technology a lot, you've heard of the word resolution and the sizes of pixels and how clear images are. So I spelled hola, but again, I didn't really plan this out very well. So my H, O, and L were similar in size, but then in order to get a letter that represented an A or looked like an A, I had to use more squares there. Again, I tried to draw a happy face, well, a face, but since I didn't plan it that great, I couldn't draw a little smile there. I ran out of space because I only wanted to use these grids. And this is how computers work. And again, these are codes and patterns that we use to communicate letters, numbers, and images. Another thing that I want to challenge you to do is to maybe come up with your own code. So you could take every letter in the alphabet and then create a code to represent it a different way. Here's an example. I'm going to do a couple of letters and then a word that I created with my code. And let me make sure I have it right. Okay. So for example, if you took all 26 letters of the alphabet, I'm just going to do A, B, C as an example. What I did is for an A, I want to represent A or code it with a star. And then I did one extra step. I put a dot or a period at the end so that whoever's reading my code would know that that's when a letter ends. And they would know when the next letter begins. So think about things like that. For the letter B, I did a wavy line. And then I wanted to show that letter ended. So I put a period or a dot there. And then for the letter C, I did 2 stars. You could turn this into a game and share it with other people, your siblings, family. Maybe draw it, take a picture, send it on a smartphone. If you're FaceTiming with anyone, and create these games. And so you want to make sure that you're sharing your key. And the key is what language we understand, the letters and numbers we know, and then the code and how to break that code. So here's a word I came up with my code. When I finished, I did all 26 letters on this tiny little card that maybe you can't see. But I used circles, triangles, upside down triangles, ovals, infinity symbols. I try to fill my 26 letters with different symbols. And this is the word I came up with. That's one letter. Here's another letter, another letter, another letter, and another letter. So notice that 2 of my letters are the same here in these spots, and another letter is the same one that repeats. So let me say that again. This is one letter. This letter is the same here and here, and these 2 letters are the same. What did I spell? Oh, I made a mistake, didn't I? What should my Uh-oh, what did I do wrong here? Let me look at my letters. H, E, L, L. My O should be a different shape. So I'm going to do this. Oh, I fixed my code. And sometimes we have to debug or fix our codes if they were wrong, and I made a mistake there. So here's my letter H represented with these two dash lines, period, to show that that's one letter. And then I used a circle with the period to represent the letter E. I used greater than symbols and dots to show my L's. And then I used kind of like a bullseye to show the letter O. So I could have sent this with my key to someone, and then we can write secret messages to each other. So I challenge you to think about ones and zeros on or off, how our computer creates images. Think about as a career maybe. Do you know somebody who codes, or do you want to be a computer programmer or a coder? What would you need to do that? What kind of cool things could you create? Video games, images, the latest, greatest app, and also play some games with codes and patterns. So I'm really glad you joined me today, and until next time, have a great day.
Hello, artists. Welcome. I am so happy to have this time to make art with you. In times of trouble and conflict, it is awesome to be able to take some time out of your day and make your own artwork. My name is Ms. Potter, and we are going to be making art together today. If I have met you already, hello again. If I have yet to meet you, hello and welcome. I'm excited to have you here. Before we begin, it's a good idea for us to get our materials put together. So today we are going to be working on a drawing. So we are going to need to have some drawing materials available. I will show you some things you can use. I found in my house, I went on a little scavenger hunt to see what I had available. And all of these are materials you can use to draw on. I found a pad of Post-it notes. It's small, but small art is just as important as big art. I found an old envelope that no one was using. I found some lined paper, which you can draw on also, as well as blank paper. Maybe you have colored paper. Maybe you even have cardboard. Any of these materials are good surfaces to draw on. For drawing materials, I wanted to give you some options. If you have a pencil, that's always great. Sometimes we don't have these things. There's pens, which you can use. Sharpies, if you have those in your house, or any kind of marker or highlighter. These are drawing materials. And I also found a blue colored pencil in my stash of supplies. So whatever you have is a good starting place. So right now, artists, I would like you to take 1 minute, and I want you to go around your home, and I need you to find a surface to draw on and something to draw with. And your time starts now. If you are already ready and you came with your drawing materials, then I thought it might be nice for us to take a few deep breaths together so we can clear our heads and get ready to make art. There's a lot happening right now, and sometimes we all need to take a deep breath. I'm doing something new today. Fun fact, I've never been on TV before, so we're all doing something new together today. So if you'll take 3 deep breaths with me, that'll give our friends enough time to get their materials together. First breath, inhale, exhale. Second breath, inhale, exhale. And our third and final deep breath, make it count. Now, I don't know about you, but that made me feel a lot better. So I feel ready to make art. Hopefully you now have the supplies you need. Before we start on our lesson, I just wanted to say that the power of making art is very real. When you're an artist, you have the power to make choices about your work. You are in control of your own choices for the next 40 minutes, and that is something really amazing. So when you're making your artwork today, I want you to remember that you're in charge. And if I start to do something and you think to yourself, I would do that differently, then do it differently. You get to make the big choices today. So our lesson today is on the power of observation. Observation means you observe. Can anybody tell me what observing is? Good. It's using your eyes to see the big, beautiful world around you. We observe all day, every day, and we don't even really know that we're doing it. When we go to our closet in the morning and we go through and we think, I want to wear purple today, and then we think, oh, this pattern would go well with this. We're using our power of observation even just to dress ourselves in the morning. And artists need to use the power of observation to make their artwork. We're looking at everything all the time. For example, last week I was outside soaking up the sunshine, sitting on my little bench outside, and I noticed the sky started to change. It started to become a sunset, and I was observing with my eyes the colors. It went from blue, and then it changed to purple, and then pink, and then red. And I just watched it and thought, that's so beautiful. So I got inspired. And later on, I went to my little art studio and made myself a little painting based on what I was observing. I thought about the colors and the way they made me feel, and I put them on my canvas. And it's just a little painting, but I like it. And it reminds me of that feeling I had when I was observing that sunset. It was a very magical moment for me. And as an artist, you can take those magical moments and you can turn them into artwork. So when we use our power of observation, we usually find something that pops out at us right away. Maybe this really bright color was something that you saw from across the room. You observed that because it stood out really, really well. Maybe I noticed the sparkle on my shoe from across my hall, and that was something that stood out to me. So when you're using your eyes, you're really taking in all the details around you. So artists, for our art activity today, you are going to need to go on a small scavenger hunt. Before you go, let me explain what you're looking for and what the rules are. So you are going to go around your home or your space and find five objects that are meaningful to you. Now, I don't want you to just grab a can of tuna because it's right there. Something that has value to you. Let me show you the 5 objects I chose as an example, and then you can go and figure out what you're going to make or what you're going to grab. My first object is a bowl that I made because I work with pottery and clay, and I use this bowl every morning to eat oatmeal out of. And I chose it because I hold it often. I love its bright, shiny green color, and it makes me happy when I put it in my hands. So this was my first object I chose. My second object I chose is the only stuffed animal I have left in my life, and I've kept it for almost 20 years. And it's this little otter friend. And I love him, obviously, because he stayed with me through all these grown-up years. So I picked my little stuffed otter friend because I thought his cute piece of seaweed might make for an interesting art piece later. I went through my closet because I wanted to find something soft. I thought it might be a fun challenge to try to draw fabric. So I picked my favorite shirt, which, as you can see, has to do with being a teacher. And I really miss my classroom right now. So I wanted to pick this object because it was special to me. Plus, look at all these cool patterns and designs. I could spend a long time drawing that if I wanted to. My fourth object is this super humongous paintbrush that I used to paint a mural on my wall. And you can see it's old, it's seen some things, and it's been with me for a long time. So that's why I grabbed this. And finally, my fifth object I grabbed was my shoe. It's a little tattered and old, but I like that it still sparkles and shines. Plus, pro tip, drawing shoes is actually really fun because there's lots of really cool information. So that's the fifth object I picked. So artists, I am going to give you 3 minutes to pick 5 objects. Now, here are the rules. It's a game. There has to be some rules. Number 1, you have to be able to hold your object in your hands. It can't be heavy and it can't be gigantic. So your object needs to fit in your hands. Number 2, say you have a favorite toy and your little brother's using it right now. Let your little brother keep using it. Your object needs to be available, meaning if someone else is using it, you can't use it. And I think I know how to spell available. You'll tell me later. And number 3, it needs to be an item that is yours or a shared item. Don't go into your mom's closet and grab something. No adult things, only you. This is your item. Something that belongs to you or something that you share. Okay, artists, you have 3 minutes to pick your 5 special objects. Ready, set, go. That's a good spot. I'd look there too. If you're having trouble thinking of ideas, ask a friend for help. Ask your action figure. They have good ideas. Okay. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. You're done already? Go check again. Just double check and make sure. They're doing a very good job, yes. 2 minutes to find your objects. You haven't started yet? Go, get started. Find something special. Check under your bed. Things hide there. Even for me. I'm old, and they still hide down there. Maybe check the kitchen if you're stuck. I hear how focused you are. I can't hear you say anything. Okay, 1 minute and 30 seconds. Check those closets. I know how you are stashing things in there. I bet there are treasures in your closet. Remember, your objects can be small. They can't be super big. Maybe you have a special seashell that you got on a trip. I can speak. One minute to go, artists. It's your last minute. Look for things that are different from each other. If you have 5 different pencils, I want you to go get 4 different things and keep 1 pencil. Try to keep your objects varied because it makes your drawings more fun. Pick something that you want to work with. It makes all the difference. Your time is counting. 30 seconds. Oh boy. Oh, 30 seconds. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, artists, you have collected your objects. Even if you didn't get 5 and you only found 4, it's really okay. And if this is something you want to do later and you get a really good idea, you definitely should. So now that you have all of your objects, we need to talk about what we're going to do with these objects and how we look at them like artists. Artists have lots of tools, but none more powerful than their brains or their hands. So we're going to be drawing at least one object. I'm going to look through mine and pick one that's my favorite. You've seen this one a couple times. I know it's my old ratty shoe, but it's my favorite out of all these objects. What can I say? So I'm going to draw this object, but before I draw it, I'm going to describe it. When you are an artist, you don't just start right away. I want you to think about what you see when you look at this object. So if I was describing my shoe, my beautiful shoe, to a friend, how would I describe it? First thing, I would talk about the shape of this object. If you have something that's more circular, you might describe it as being round. If you have something that's more square, when you talk about it, you might describe it as having edges or corners. My shoe is not a circle or a square or a triangle. This is a shape that we would call organic. It's curvy, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's harder to describe. So this would be sort of an organic shape. It's not flat. Look, it has some height to it, so I wouldn't describe this shape as being flat. So I would describe this as being a full organic shape. Next thing I would look at is the texture of my object. Do you know what texture means? Can you tell me? Good. Texture is what something looks like and what something feels like when you touch it. When I touch this object, I feel that it has a smooth texture right here. It's pretty smooth. I think you can see that my texture is shiny, kind of like this piece of tape right here. I would use the word shiny. Mine is even bumpy. Each one of these little pieces of sparkle right here have a very bumpy texture to them. And the bottom of my shoe, I would say that it's hard. I can't change it. I can't really press into it. It has sort of this hard surface at the bottom. That's the texture of my shoe. You can see that artists take in a lot of information at once, even with just an item as simple as this. And the last thing I want you to look at with your objects is the color. There are lots of colors, many more than I have here, but this is what I had room for. I would describe this color of my shoe. It's not white anymore. I think you can tell that. I would call it off-white with silver sparkles. I even have these black lines, this sort of black color at the bottom of my shoe. And at the bottom, it's brown. This one shoe had all of these different colors. So that's how I would describe my object. So artists, I want you to pick up one of your objects, and I want you to hold it in your hands. Okay. Feel your object. Look at it. And then you can describe it. Either you can describe it to me or someone next to you. But the first thing right now, will you please describe the shape of your object? Good. Oh, wow. Your objects are all so different. Okay. Next, I want you to describe the texture of your object. What does it feel like when you touch it? Good. Yes, your object can have more than one texture. Absolutely. Third, look at your object and describe what colors you see. Good. You might even be finding that some colors are lighter and darker, like my little otter friend. He has a darker brown on the outside and a lighter brown next to his nose. When I draw him, I would want to show that difference. So now that you've had a chance to use your describing words, I want you to look at all of your objects and pick the one that catches your eye. Out of all these objects, which one do you find most interesting right now? I am going to pick my old trusty paintbrush. And now we are going to practice drawing from our observation. We're going to draw what we're looking at. So in front of you, you want to set your object down so that you can see it. I'll put mine on the table. You might hold yours in front of you, wherever it can be that you're not moving it a lot. And you're going to get your drawing surface, whatever you chose, and your drawing material ready. I'm going to draw over here so you can see what I'm working on. And we can draw together. I'll describe what I'm doing, and while I'm doing it, try it with your object as well. So I have my paintbrush. I'll hold it up so that you can see it. As an artist, I want to start by drawing the shape of this object. I can see that my object is tall and that it has these 3 parts to it. I see my handle, I see this shiny little connector, and these stiff bristles. I might draw these as separate shapes. Watch how I do it. This handle right here, I notice it's tall and it's kind of round. See, that's my handle. And this shape right here, I notice that it kind of goes in right there. Look, I have this little space, and then it starts to come out on the edges. So I'm going to make it a little bit longer there. And then these stiff bristles of my brush, what shape would you call that? What kind of shape does that look like to you? I think you're right. Kind of reminds me of a rectangle. See that? So I'm going to start by making it a simple shape. It doesn't look exactly like my paintbrush, and that's okay. If you make a drawing and it's not perfect, then good. We don't need our drawings to be perfect. We need them to be tries. We want to try and give our best. If I look inside of my paintbrush right here, see this texture? Now that I have my shape, I can start adding my texture. I see all of my little brushes, my little bristles right here. I might draw them as little lines. And see how some are even sticking out of my rectangle? I might add them like this. I might add them at the top too. I might use my lines. This is real shiny over here. I notice that I have this shiny texture, but look, it's covered in paint because my brush is dirty. Oops, Miss Potter, clean your brushes better. So I'm going to make these sort of wiggly little shapes where my little color blotches would go. So when you're looking at your object, you're just looking at it one little piece at a time so we don't get overwhelmed. Just like in real life. Do it one little step at a time. And I also see, if you look at my object, there's these little circles down here that I can add. And let's look at the texture of my handle. What do you notice here that's a little bit different? Good eye. There's a piece of tape sticking out at the bottom. How cool is that? I didn't notice that earlier. So I could draw and add in this little piece of tape that I'm seeing. Artists, something that happens when we draw from our observation is we start to draw what we think we see. And until we really look closely, we can find what's actually there. If I was just drawing a paintbrush to do a paintbrush, I wouldn't have the tape. I wouldn't have these cool splotches or these bristles sticking out. And it wouldn't be as interesting and unique. And I can add all these little color areas over here. So I've added my shape and I've added my texture. Now, at this point in your drawing, you might have colors, you might not. So, something you can do, if you have colors, that's great. See if you can match the colors to what you have. I see little bits of green on my brush over here, so maybe I start to color in little bits of green. If you don't have any colors, you can do something really cool with your pencil that we call shading. I could add, with my pencil, I want you to look, I'll hold it up for you. Look at the shiny part of my brush. Do you see how some areas look a little bit darker and how some areas look a little bit lighter? That's something I could show instead of my color. I could press down my pencil harder for the darker areas and softer for the lighter, shinier areas. Right now, it's time for you to play with what you have. And as you draw from observation and you think to yourself, Ms. Potter, I want to give it different colors. I want it to be cooler than it is. Go for it. You can make it as colorful as you want. You know what I might do right now because you inspired me? I want to add some color as if I was using my brush to paint with. So at the top of my paintbrush right here, I'm going to make it look like it was just dipped in blue paint and it's ready to make a painting. And I did that with my creativity. So it's really up to you, artists, and how you decide you want to do this. So let's spend some time and draw together. I'm going to draw some of my objects with you. And while I do it, I'll describe what I'm doing. But I want you to focus on your objects. Next, I'm going to draw my shoe because I've been waiting to draw my shoe since we started. And you know this. I've shown you this shoe a lot of times. If you're drawing a shoe too, awesome. If not, also awesome. Whatever you're drawing, remember, start with the shape, add your textures and your colors later. So my shoe, I notice it curves, and then it kind of curves on the bottom. And see right here, it kind of dips down. So when I draw my shape, I'm going to make it dip down a little bit. And that's how I get that shoe-looking shape. And then I notice on my shoe, I have this big shape down below where the heel, the sole is, and then where the fabric is, it looks different. So I'm going to make a line that separates my sole from the top of my shoe. See, sometimes it's nice to make your shapes into smaller shapes so they're a little bit easier to work with. Ooh, look, I have these thick black lines right here, which I can use my Sharpie for, and I think those will look pretty cool. So that's my shape. Oh, I even have this little toe. What shape would you call that? Maybe a half circle? Nope. Maybe I just add a little line right there. That's my little toe part. And I'm just going to keep going this way. Let's see. What do I want to do next? I think I want to start adding in some of my little shapes and little textures. Like look at my shoelace right here. See how there's these little circles they're popping out of? That's something I could add because that's something that I am observing. These little circles. And then I see how I have my shoelaces that kind of crisscross themselves. And they're kind of thick. So I'm going to use my marker on its kind of thick edge. And you might find as you go, artists, that it's kind of slow. And that's okay. Take your time. Art doesn't need to be fast. Art doesn't need to look great. It's supposed to feel good. And it's nice sometimes to focus on something other than what's happening. So you can see my shoes are all crisscross crazy. That might not be exactly what's going on, but that's okay, because that's what I am seeing with my eyes. You're practicing a skill. It doesn't happen right away. A lot of times when we make art, we're not as forgiving with ourselves as we should be. We feel like it has to be perfect. We feel like we're making mistakes, and we're not. We're learning a new skill. This takes time, and it takes development. So always be kind to yourself. As I go, oh, these little silver little bumpy guys over here, these little textures are going to take me a while, but they are going to make my shoe pop out and come to life. So when I find little textures like this, I can even make them with little shapes. Look, I'm going to make that texture using tiny little circles. Now, if you tuned in earlier to the Zentangle lesson, you'll know that making tiny repetitive patterns feels really good for your brain and your hands. And you can just get lost in making that little pattern a really long time. If you're using a pencil, don't forget, you can erase. If you're using a marker, you're just going to have to make what we call in my classroom a beautiful oops. let's say I'm drawing with my marker, and I did that oopsie daisy right there. Uh-oh, I'm not going to start over. I'm going to turn this into something I never thought possible. It's going to be a surprise. See if you can guess. I'm not going to tell you, but see if you can guess. Okay, any guesses? No? No? I know, that's not great. Bingo! I made little wings for the back of my shoe, so now my shoe can fly. It couldn't have done that before. And I can just go and add all of these different little textures and colors. And you might find that while you're doing a pattern and you want to take a break, that's okay. You can start on something else and come back to what you were doing later. Remember, you are the artist and you are in control. You make the decisions about your artwork, how real you want it to be, how silly you want it to be, how special you want it to be. That's up to you. Oh, look, I have these little dark holes right here. I can color them in black. So you can see, artists, a lot of what I have left to do is make these little shoe patterns. Now, we've been practicing this with drawing materials, but you can make art from observation with anything you have. I could have used painting materials. I could paint this shoe. I could use paper and cut it into a shape. I could tear and put other pieces of paper on top of it. You are only limited by the limits you set for yourself and with what you have available. You can do all sorts of amazing things with just a pencil if that's all you have. Artists thrive. That means they succeed when they are given a challenge. Right now, one of your challenges is to stay at home, which means you can't go out and buy new materials. You have to use what you have, and that takes a very creative brain. So the more you think about what you can use, the stronger your brain's going to get. Because when we use our creative selves, man, we really turn our lives around for the better. The more creative we can think, the more places we can go. And this is why we practice things like this. For my last sample, while you're working, you keep doing what you're doing, I just wanted to talk to you about drawing something soft like fabric. If you chose to draw a shirt or something, let's observe. Let's observe. Notice how my fabric drapes. Do you see how it makes these sort of little lines and creases? These are something that make this look soft, right? All of these little bits and pieces. And if you look close, you can even see these little lines where your fabric is stitched together. I don't even have to draw my whole shirt, but if I'm just drawing, say, this little part right down here, fabric's kind of tricky. I would find my seam, this spot where my shirt is sewn together, I might start with that because that's a line. It gives me something to work with. And then see how it's kind of organic at that bottom right there? Maybe I add a little organic bit right there. And when I see these little lines over here, I want to show them. That's where my fabric is folding. And when I show those observations, you get a better feel for what the actual material is. These are really cool drawing techniques. And remember, they take time. You take practice for all of these things. Let's say if I had taken my bowl, when you look inside my bowl, what texture do you see? What do you notice right away? Yeah, you're right. It's very, very shiny. See all these little white reflections? Those are the kind of things we want to add in our artwork. Sometimes it's just as simple as making a little white shape and leaving it white while you color everything around it. And that makes a nice shiny texture. I encourage you to play to discover these things on your own. Whatever kinds of objects you've chosen to draw or you continue to choose to draw, I want you to remember, start with its shape, add in its textures, and finish it with colors. Or remember, I showed you with your pencil, you can sort of do grays and blacks and whites if you don't have any access to color right now. And it doesn't make your artwork any less special. So whatever you're working on, let's start finding a nice stopping place for now so that we can talk about what we made. Because part of being an artist is sharing your artwork. What good would it be if you just sat at home and made all these beautiful drawings and put them under your bed for no one to see? So if you have a friend nearby, you can talk about this together. If not, we can keep talking together to each other. Whatever you worked on, whatever sort of drawing you came up with, here. For me in my sharing, I will use my paintbrush because I think it came out the coolest out of all my drawings, personally. You might think my shoe looks cool with its little wings back here. But for right now, I want to share with you my paintbrush. I want you to describe one thing that you think looks really accurate. Like, look at your drawing and pick one thing that you think you did really well. For me, personally, I think that I drew a really close paintbrush shape. I think the shape of my paintbrush looks pretty accurate. Now I want you to try it with your drawing. Tell me what's one thing that you think came out really great and accurate. Good. Good. I'm really glad you had that experience. Now, when we make art, not everything goes according to plan. So I'm going to look at this and think, what's something that I did that made my drawing unique? That means, where does it look different from how it looks in real life? For me, I think adding that nice little blue splotch right there really brought the drawing to life. I want you to look at your object and tell me something you did, maybe on purpose, maybe on accident, that made it look different than it originally was supposed to. Good. Good problem solving. Art takes its own way sometimes, and we have to work with it however it comes to us. When you share your artwork with people, maybe an adult, maybe a friend, maybe a stuffed animal, I want you to remember to talk about how you made it. You could describe it as saying, I made these shapes, right? I could tell them I made this rectangle at the top. Maybe you would describe it saying, I picked these colors. Maybe you want to describe those textures. Remember, my paintbrush was real stiff and my bottom was real splotchy. These are all different ways you can talk about your artwork. I challenge you to not say that this was good or bad. I challenge you to describe it with what you're observing. Because remember, what we talked about today was drawing and observing. I don't want you to forget that this is a superpower. Your power of observation helps you not only as an artist, but as a human. The better you are at observing what's happening around you, the more prepared you are, the more comfortable you feel, the more confident you are. So as we get close to being done for the day, there's a couple things I want to remind you of. When you make art, take a deep breath and let everything go from before. This is your time. Your art time is for you. Your choices, your control. You decide how it's going to go. It's nice if you can find an art space that you can use in your house, even if it's on a floor. You can flip a plastic bin upside down and work on that somewhere where you feel comfortable making art. And as you start being more observant and you start observing more, you'll find things that make really good art materials. And I want you to start adding them to a little collection so that every time you go to make an art project, you have new things that you can use. Something else that I believe is very important as an artist is signing your work. Even if I had made a drawing, I'll make a drawing right now. Make a little tiny drawing on this little tiny envelope. So I found this envelope in my recycling bin, and I asked my friend if I could use it, and she said yes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a happy little envelope, and I am going to put a little note in there so that when I get back out into the world, I can give it to a friend. But before I do, I'm going to remember to sign my artwork. Signing your artwork gives it a special kind of power. So whatever you're working on, whether it's your favorite thing or not, I want you to sign it anyways. Artists, it has been a great pleasure to work with you today, and I really hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us today for At Home with APS.